An important responsibility of managers is to resolve conflicts, but this can be done in numerous different ways, some better than others. So let's review some of the different strategies for how conflicts can be managed. To look at conflict management, we'll use a 2x2 matrix of 5 different strategies developed by Ruble and Thomas, similar to what you see here. They range on levels of cooperativeness, recognizing the importance of nurturing relationships and empathizing with others' views to find mutually agreeable solutions, and assertiveness, where you're pushing for your own needs, wants, views, positions, or priorities. The first strategy is competing, being assertive and uncooperative, or always trying to get your way, to win at all costs, without regard for how others view the situation or what they may need or want. This approach is usually counterproductive, especially within organizations, unless you plan on getting rid of a lot of people or causing them to leave on their own. You'll need to continue working with other people over the long term. And using a competing strategy can lead to harsh feelings of resentment and eventual backlash that comes back to haunt you. So competing is best avoided. Speaking of avoiding, this is our second strategy. Avoiding is being neither assertive nor cooperative. It's trying to avoid confrontation or coming to a commonly accepted solution to conflict at all costs. And the issues don't end up getting resolved. Avoidance is a natural reaction, particularly when you just don't feel like dealing with something, or when the is about to hit the fan and you're keen enough to want to step to the side of it. But for management, it's not a workable strategy. It can work temporarily in some cases, especially if the goal is to give yourself more space to gather information and come up with a better approach, but as a long-term strategy, it essentially amounts to kicking the can down the road and is like a snowball rolling downhill. It's just going to make the problem bigger and harder to deal with later. The third strategy is accommodating, being cooperative but unassertive, giving way to what others want, sacrificing your own personal interests for those of others. Certainly, this can be a noble position to take in some situations, but it doesn't work well as a habitual or go-to strategy in the long run. Why? Because it results in an imbalance, where one party's needs are being met, but not the other. And it can even lead to one party dominating over the other and taking advantage of them by making unreasonable demands. Consistently lacking the ability to say no or trying to please everyone usually ends up with that person being a victim. The fourth strategy is compromising, finding a middle ground point on the scales of assertiveness and cooperativeness that satisfies all parties that are involved. A perfect balance, right in the middle in the center. This can be a good position to take. The challenge is when you end up being perceived as focused on mediating and preventing any kind of conflict, positive or negative, from arising by trying to get everyone to just get along. And when conflicts center around some major issues, compromising may not be the way to go to actually solve them. For instance, if the conflict is over, let's say, corruption, the compromise position between no corruption and total corruption of just a little bit but not too much corruption isn't the most ethical of positions to take. Compromising can also send a signal to others that they can benefit from instigating a conflict where one wouldn't otherwise exist, to come to the negotiating table with sometimes ridiculously high demands because they know they'll at least get something out of it, and they could end up benefiting from that at the expense of others who end up having to give up something for the sake of compromise when really there isn't any justifiable reason that they should. And the final strategy is collaboration. This is being both assertive and cooperative, finding a win-win solution where everyone benefits without giving something up, as is the case when compromising. This is the ideal strategy to aim for most of the time, as it best facilitates healthy long-term relationships based on mutual trust and respect. Even though collaboration is what we ultimately want to shoot for, we don't always get there. Most of us, if we're being honest, have used variations of these different strategies at different times depending on the circumstances. And there are times when the other strategies are more appropriate. And of course, all parties involved must come to the table for collaboration to work. If one party isn't willing to collaborate, it's not going to work. So then, to promote more cooperation, managers should rely on 3 guiding principles. First, focusing on larger shared goals. So for criminal justice agencies, Crime reduction or improving quality of life of citizens are examples of big picture mission-oriented goals that everyone can get behind. These tend to be more unifying than things like arrest, conviction, and recidivism metrics. Second, developing the skills necessary for individuals to negotiate collaborative outcomes. People don't necessarily know how to collaborate very well. It certainly should be assumed that they automatically know how to best approach different situations without any guidance. So, teach them. Help them figure out how to do it. Bring in a third party to facilitate if that makes more sense. This will have far-reaching benefits. If people are better at working with others to find win-win solutions within the organization, they'll be able to do it better outside the organization as well. They'll be better at interacting with members of the public, which is crucial and helpful all around, and goes hand in hand with the third principle, improving communication. Trying to facilitate communications between different units or departments within an organization, or between different criminal justice agencies, or with other government agencies, or with members of the public, with community groups, businesses, elected officials, non-government organizations, and others. Improving communication is one of the keys to managing conflict, and this deserves a concentrated focus onto itself. So communication is the next topic I'll be covering in this series on criminal justice management. So that's all for now. What conflict management strategy do you think you've relied on most frequently? And how has that strategy worked out for you? Are there other pros and cons to these different strategies I didn't mention? What are some of the things that can get in the way of a collaboration? Do you agree or disagree about collaboration being the ideal strategy to aim for? Comment below and let me know. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching, see you next time, and have a good one.